Bobby Baggio, and I'm here to talk about managing the invisible. How do you manage the invisible in the virtual workplace? A lot of companies, organizations, schools have a very difficult time in conceptualizing how to manage the invisible. Most organizational structures are built on hierarchies. And although we joke that the online world is really very flat, it's not all that flat when it comes out of a traditional organizational structure. There's always this conflict between management, which means in some way leadership should be in control of those people who work in the virtual environment, and leadership that says you really can't control those people, you need to inspire those people. So in a virtual workplace, when we talk about managing the invisible, we're talking about expectations, how you influence people in this environment, and giving up on what traditionally was influence and control. Let's talk a little bit about different kinds of influences in this environment, different kinds of ways that we touch people and we interact with people, and how those touch points, conceptual touch points, transactional touch points, and then actual touch points really influence performance in this environment. All right, here we go. So, how do companies and organizations manage the invisible? How do you get management teams, leadership teams to feel comfortable with people working remotely and letting go of this idea of time and control? The remote workplace is created by technologies. So one of the first things that is important in this communications environment in managing the invisible is having a remote environment of three infrastructures: the company infrastructure, the remote workplace infrastructure, and then the network infrastructure that connects those two, being very reliable. It's also important to understand that because you can email anybody on the planet, or tweet anybody, or post on Facebook to almost anybody, it doesn't mean you should. The remote workplace still has some of the ethics, some of the mores, some of the structure that traditional organizations and environments have. So just because you can email the CEO doesn't mean you necessarily should. What's important in this environment is the replacement of typical management rhetoric with this leadership movement. You know, the ability to inspire loyalty, the ability to trust employees, the ability to seek collaboration and cooperation. The traditional corporate culture, where the corporation and management is in charge of manipulating the workers and the employees, just doesn't work. The influence and the expectations of people in a remote environment have to be very clear, and they have to be based on trust. And how do you do that? You do it with communications. The most important thing in communications is hearing what isn't being said. So that brings us to touch points. The virtual world is all about connecting and connections. How you touch other people, co-workers, customers, employees, even people who are your competitors. It's all about connecting and connections. So how do you create touch points? Think about conceptual touch points, transactional touch points, and then actual touch points. Conceptual touch points are organizational culture, perceptions, worker perceptions, views, customer perception and views, your branding, is it consistent? Internal and external influences, how do they affect the company? Are you part of the news? Are you part of the media? Are you part of what's trending? Social media, what's being said about you on social media is very important. And then dialectics, the language that you use, the semantics, how you speak. Do you refer to people in gender neutral terms? Or are you referring to everybody as guys? Intangibles that influence behavior. Sending little notes, saying thank you, using an emoticon now and then when it's important. Then there's transactional touch points. These are a little more in control. They're the operational influences. Do you have things on the cloud? Are they accessible from the remote workplace? Are the performance requirements clear? Are the processes in place? Do you have the manuals, the directories, the organizational charts, the mission statements? Are your information systems up to date? And do your political structures internally support the transactions? Then there are actual touch points, and these are the real interfaces, the interfaces that really happen. Leader to leader conversations, worker to leader conversations, worker to worker conversations, worker to professional tasks, and then how people work within the organizational infrastructure. The heart of performance in a remote working environment is based on communication-based work practices. And conversations are different in this environment. You don't have the visual cues. You have to be aware of when you communicate, how often you communicate, and then what and how things are being said, how things are being said in this environment, through what mechanisms of communications. Email is a different form of communication than text messaging. Text messaging is a different form of communication than a video chat. So one of the things that you need to become aware of in this environment is listening between the lines. Listening not only to what is being said, but the general energy and the general environment in which that communication is taking place. You're listening not only for prescribed communication, but emotional communication. Do you sense that there's something off? Do you sense that there's something wrong? Do you sense that somebody's disturbed or stressed or maybe out of balance about something? Listening between the lines so that you're picking up on not only the communication, the voice that's coming out of a person's mouth, but the intonation, the energies. What we say and what we mean can be two very different things. So you want to tune into intonation. You want to tune into the energy, the environment, how people are talking, how often they're communicating. Are they saying the same thing over and over? Are they saying one thing, but their voice, their intonation is saying something very different? And here's the book. The book on this is Virtual Touchpoints. Pick it up. It's on Amazon. It's available. It's relatively inexpensive. It's under $20. And it's all about leading, inspiring, and measuring performance in a virtual workplace so that everybody feels more comfortable. It's got exercises, it's got case studies. It's a great book for team meetings and team training. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate it. Hope it was helpful.